yet, then my announcement was unnecessary.
All right. The service goes on. We continue on page 177. Let's continue together at the top of the page. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, ulecha na'eh lehodot. And now on page 178, we sing. We offer a prayer for peace, Shalom Rav, that abundant peace may find us, all Israel, and all the world.
The piano, of course, was a part of the power outage.
So let's sing a cappella.
No, it's back
Oh, it's
on.
back? Okay, good.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Ki atahu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. V'tov beinecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Tasim Le'olam. Tasim Le'olam. We take a moment now for personal prayers and quiet meditations.
And we do welcome back all of those watching online. We had a power outage here, and we are back.
Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, achol vehayam, rishvu shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat adam, achol vehayam, rishvu shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat
Tag team in this. Okay. It is with great pleasure that we welcome Rabbi Lance Sussman back to Mainline Reformed Temple as this evening's guest speaker and as scholar in residence. A distinguished historian and rabbi, Rabbi Sussman was ordained at the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion and earned his PhD in American Jewish history from the same institution. He served most recently as the senior rabbi of Reform Congregation, Knesset Israel, in Elkins Park from 2001 to 2022, and is now their rabbi emeritus. Beyond the Bima, Rabbi Sussman has had a distinguished career in academia, teaching Jewish history at several esteemed institutions, including Princeton University, Rutgers University, Temple University, Hunter College, and HUC in New York City. He also served as chair of the Jewish Studies Department at Binghamton University, SUNY, and currently serves as chair of the Board of Governors at Gratz College in Melrose Park. Rabbi Sussman also serves on the executive board of the Philadelphia Board of Rabbis. In addition to his leadership and teaching, Rabbi Sussman is a prolific author and historian. His latest work includes a compelling trilogy that offers an intimate and scholarly look into the evolving role of the Reform rabbi in America. First in the trilogy is The Portrait of an American Rabbi, in his own words. The second was A Portrait of a Reform Rabbi, Continuity and Change. And the most recent publication, The Portrait of a Rabbi Historian, How Did We Get Here? Through these books, Rabbi Sussman explores the personal and professional journey of a Reform rabbi, weaving together memoir, history, and analysis of the ever-changing Jewish landscape. More information on how to procure Rabbi Sussman's works can be found online? Online, we shall say, online. What was it? What was it? Oh, there it is. www.lancejsussman.com.
As opposed to my child's name.
Yes, that's a good distinction. Starting next Thursday at 12 o'clock, and for the next 2 Thursdays after that, Rabbi Sussman will be teaching a 3-part series in person and on Zoom based on his most recent publications. The first class will be Wise Sermons, Rabbis as the Jewish Narrators of Our Times. The second will be Sink or Swim, the Future of Reform Judaism. And the third will be the special relationship between American Jews and Teddy Roosevelt. Tonight, we will be treated to a conversation between our own senior rabbi, Jerry Newberg, and Rabbi Sussman on the subject, How Bad Is It, Anti-Semitism Today? Please join me in welcoming Rabbi Lance Sussman.
You ready?
I'm ready. Hope
All
the
right.
mic is close enough.
The mic is good, thank you. I just want to point out that hopefully everything is working back at their household now, but our dear friend and colleague, Rabbi Steinbrink, is watching from home, and he is taking notes, including on your mic usage. So,
Hello, Rabbi.
and I'm sure you've known Rabbi Steinbrink even longer than I have, which is 21 years.
Right.
So, and you and I go back a long way, too, speaking of history.
Yes, we do.
All right. Well, we are delighted and honored to have you with us again, although I wish we were talking about a happier topic.
Yes.
So we're in a brave new world right now. And so my first question to you, Rabbi Sussman, is how is the rise in anti-Semitism we've experienced since October 7th different or the same as previous generations experienced anti-Semitism in this country?
Oh, such a hard question to start. Okay.
Well, you taught at Princeton. I'm
First,
sure you can
Rabbi,
handle it.
thank you for having me and Liz come to Mainline, to come back to Mainline. And then I just want to compliment all of you on your beautiful service. It's peaceful and warm and calm, and it's really a pleasure. I've mostly been doing services by Zoom, so to be in a real service is a machaya, as they used to say, and it's wonderful to be here, so thank you. So October 7, from a certain point of view, was a real game changer in the sense that, for the most part, not entirely, anti-Semitism had been on the decrease in the United States for decades, really. There was a real spike in anti-Semitism in this country after the Civil War. Jim Crow didn't just affect the black community, but it led to segregation and animus throughout the country. And then the Civil Rights Movement started to cure that process, not entirely. It's very complex, as you know. But by and large, certainly in the time that I grew up in the 50s and 60s, anti-Semitism was receding. Sparked again after the Vietnam War. It comes from different directions, both right and left, but we haven't seen the kind of explosion of anti-Semitism as we have since October the 7th. Anti-Semitism traditionally comes from both the right and the left. It's an equal opportunity for hating. Nobody has any monopoly on it. And traditionally, watchdog organizations watch the right, like ADL. But with October 7th, the marriage between the left and Islamic communities opposed to the state of Israel combined here, not unlike what has been going on in Europe for many, many years. It might seem to be strange bedfellows, but that's what politics does. And it has led to an unprecedented spike in the level of anti-Semitism in the United States. It has been violent. It is focused on college campuses, which is not new, by the way, except for this golden age in American Jewish life. People are questioning whether that's over. Universities have not necessarily been hospitable places for Jews, let alone for Judaism. Middle Ages, Jews weren't allowed to attend or study, or Judaism to be studied. But October 7th was a real game changer. And I think what it did was, even though it was combined with a spike from the right, had just preceded it. If you think of Charlottesville and some of the synagogue shootings, the widespread intensity had now came particularly from the left, and unfortunately from the Islamic community, despite the fact there had been so many efforts to build bridges between Jews and Muslims here in the United States. And it has left the Jewish community feeling threatened to some extent, bewildered. I think when families apply to college today with their kids, they're asking a question they couldn't have imagined 20 years ago. Is it safe for my child to go to, let's say, Columbia? There has been a failure of leadership, right and left, to condemn anti-Semitism. And the big question in my mind would be, particularly since October 7, is the active side of anti-Semitism serving to normalize anti-Semitism in the middle of society. And right now, it seems to be having an effect, but not a radical effect, so that it's not like the middle of society in which Jews and Judaism had become increasingly accepted, all of a sudden is turning into a bastion of anti-Semitism. I don't see that happening in the core of America, but there are flashpoints, and there's high capacity communication from both the right and the left, with all the different groups that go into those two categories. It is not a great moment.
You can say that again.
It's not a great moment.
There you go. That your answer to my first question prompted many other questions, but you told me 3 questions, so we'll move on to the second one, which you also preempted a bit,
Anything you want to ask?
which is about what is happening on college campuses. And I think this does actually touch on some of what you just responded to about the right and the left. And so, and obviously, and I just had this conversation with someone in my office last night about where should I be letting my child apply and attend college. But as Reform Jews, we tend to lean a little further to the left, not to generalize. But in society, we've seemed to have lost our way with the middle of which you speak. It seems, or maybe it is just that the far left and the far right shout the loudest so they get the attention. But for all of our young people who are on college campuses or getting ready to think about college, what lessons can we learn from history about how to navigate this moment? Because you've been on college campuses as a professor. We have some amazing college students who teach here in our religious school, and they are really suffering. So how can we support them or give them some guidance from past Jewish experiences to guide them towards a better moment?
Well, to illustrate how things have changed, a few years ago I was invited to teach seminars on Judaism in America at Princeton. And there were some incidents involving not anti-Semitism there, but there were protests from the Islamic student organization as to whether or not the food service at Princeton could serve an alternative to Israeli hummus. Now, by today's standards, that's pretty mild to have a second type of hummus available. So things really have changed. As I said in the first comment, universities historically have been tough places for Jews in the Middle Ages. They weren't interested in having Jews or Judaism at universities, to say the least. And there was not a person teaching college who could openly identify as Jewish in this country until Thomas Jefferson appointed a math professor at the University of Virginia. At Harvard, for example, in the colonial period, if you wanted to teach, you had to be Christian, teach at the university, and they needed a Hebrew teacher. And they found a Jewish person to teach it, but he was required to convert. And again, just to pick on Harvard, in the 1920s, like many schools, it imposed a quota on Jewish students. And President Lowell, I think, said something that kind of frames the paradox of anti-Semitism very clearly when asked, why do we have to have a quota against Jews at this university? And he said, I don't want Jews here because they assimilate too rapidly and they're too clannish. So it absolutely diametrically opposed characteristics of the Jewish community. They just didn't want more. They didn't want to turn, quote, Harvard into a yeshiva. And it was hard to break into the university. And I would say an unknown factor, unspoken factor, is Jews were not necessarily that interested in universities. It was mostly a business community, and business colleges were just starting. But the Jews discovered the university. Public education had a lot to do with that as kind of the escalator to the middle class. And so by mid-20th centuries, Jews were very focused on universities, of getting their families into them. Usually they would have to pick one child. Imagine 3 boys in a family, and they had to pick one to go to school because of finance, greatly changed by the GI Bill. And then it became very, very, very popular in the Jewish community. So it took a long time for Jews to discover universities and for Jewish universities to accept Jews, including starting at Harvard, but then particularly in the 60s, the spread of Jewish studies. There has been a change in curriculum even before the current demonstrations began against Israel, in which Jews who mostly, as you said, at least Reformed Jews to some extent, conservative Jews with a capital C, lean to left of center in American politics, were interested in the social history of the United States. It actually came from France. It was called the Annales School. People who didn't like it called it pots and pans history. And they were interested in the different groups. They were interested in the history of animus, their history of racism. And as that curriculum begins to develop, the question is, where exactly do you put anti-Semitism? Is anti-Semitism one of these forms of animus, or is it excluded from it? And Jews are viewed as part of the dominant white element in American society, and anything against them, in fact, is just protest against an oppressive power. And that really was revealed with October the 7th. Right away, it was known that there was tremendous pointed violence against the women who were captured and taken as hostage, including sexual violence against them. And there was a worldwide silence from feminist organizations that because of this problem with curriculum and trying to understand the history of racism and discrimination as to whether or not Jews were on the oppressor side or Jews were on the victim side. And it has made things difficult, both intellectually. There is an intellectual problem. On some campuses, the greatest threat to Jewish students is from faculty. And in other places, it's because of demonstrators, very often outside groups who are most welcome here, most welcome on the university. They encourage some of these outside groups to be part of them. We had problems here at Penn, for example. It was cyclical. Beginning of the semester could be very hot. By the time of finals, it slowed down a little bit. I went over to Penn to hear Dara Horn speak, and it was what was supposedly the hot point of the protests against 10/7, and the whole room was filled with people from town, no different than the congregation here tonight. There were no students there whatsoever. They were in the dining halls. It was pretty quiet, and there were no protests against them. So it was very, very uneven. Nobody knows the future, but going forward, we just don't know what the environment is. A number of studies have been launched, a number of university committees. Penn now has an interfaith committee council that's looking into things to try and diffuse it. A number of colleges that were not known for high Jewish enrollment immediately put out the world. We live in a market economy here, and said, send the Jewish kids to these schools because they're going to be safe. And the question in the Jewish community is it going to maintain its commitment not just to higher education, which I think is absolutely not a question. Yes, Jews will remain committed to higher education, but will they shift in the schools that they want to pick for their kids? And a lot will depend on how the schools handle the situation and what develops. But there are significant questions today, and particularly in families, let's say with 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds beginning to think about where to send their children.
So 2 questions. even though I know I'm only supposed to ask one more. One,
Can you, it's
the,
your,
well, I
your
know.
clock.
Well,
It's your clock.
I don't want mutiny. So my first question is: in the 1920s, the president of Harvard could not come up with a better answer than "I don't want Jews here because they're assimilate too fast and they're clannish." That's the best the president of Harvard could give people.
Well, he may have been trying to be funny. I'm not sure. I think behind that, of course, was eugenics and the beginning of a racialization, if that's a word. I've been accused of making up words before, but a racialization of anti-Semitism. There are all types of anti-Semitism. There can be religious anti-Semitism. There can be economic anti-Semitism. And beginning in the late 19th century, connected to Darwinism, connected to the study of genes, a racialized anti-Semitism developed. Even the term anti-Semitism itself, which is a very problematic word, by the way, because what's Semitism? You know, it's a word that was invented in the 18th century and nobody knew what it meant. A Jewish scholar in the middle of the 19th century from Germany created the term anti-Semitism. A Jewish doctor in Russia a little bit later said that's a nonsensical term. We should call it Judeophobia and view it as a psychiatric disorder. The Germans used to call it Judenhass, the hatred of Jews. So I think what Lowell was reflecting was really the world of Jim Crow America. In World War I, President Wilson officially segregated the Army of the United States, and it was based on a new pseudo-scientific backing to Judenhass, hatred of Jews, that somehow Jews were biologically different, that Jewish DNA was different, and that you could, no matter how you educated a Jew, they would come out as a Jew because being Jewish was a biological condition, and Jewish DNA is nefarious. And that was probably what was really behind it, but he wasn't going to say that.
Well, thank you. So my last question for you this evening, but hopefully many more questions to come in the future. What are the lessons we can learn from history as to how to navigate the way forward, especially in such a polarized world? How do we learn from the past?
I think one of the things we can learn from American history in particular is not to recede, not to be like a turtle going into a shell or an ostrich digging one's head into the sand. One of the things that was different about the American Revolution, and this is a topic that I've written on recently in an American Jewish Archives and have another piece coming out in the Toro Law Review, is that in the colonies, although there was a tiny number of Jews, they stood up and said, we need to practice our Judaism openly here on these shores, and we need to be accepted as equals. And there was a certain type of activism in the Jewish community in the United States and in the colonies before that, from the minute Jews began arriving in North America. It begs the whole question as to whether or not the New World had a medieval past or not. But when the first Jews came here, they were told not to unpack by Peter Stuyvesant, the grumpy governor of New Amsterdam, and they said, we're unpacking and we're staying, and we're appealing to the Dutch West India Company. When West Point opened, a Jewish student applied. And in fact, in the first class at West Point, half of the graduates in 1800 were Jewish. and the other guy had a higher GPA, but it was 1 out of 2. During the Revolution, there were Jewish officers in the American Army. No other army in the world since Judah Maccabee had Jewish officers. But in this country, Jews stepped forward. For good or bad, there were Jewish officers in the North and the South in the Civil War. Jews were active in the time of the writing of the federal Constitution in particular, saying that there should be no impediment beginning at the federal level to keeping Jews out of office. The technical mechanism that was used was an oath of office, that you had to be a Christian or a Protestant or a Catholic or not a Catholic, as the case would be, in order to be sworn into office. And Jews actually, particularly here in Philadelphia, there was a committee at Mikveh Israel, protested against it, put letters in the newspaper. And then a fight began at the state level because the majority of colonies and the majority of states in the early United States, and this is already under the federal Constitution, had obstacles for Jews to hold public office. And the Jewish community did not shy away from the fight. So that's number one, is to stay in the fight and say, look, by right and by constitutional law and by the long history of case law here in the United States, discrimination against Jews is un-American, is illegal, is unconstitutional. So that would be step one, to continue to have chutzpah and not say, oh, we've always been persecuted and there's nothing we can do about it. The second is you have to embrace Judaism. You have to know what you're fighting for. Jewish can be just a label. It can be just an assortment of items on a menu, or it can be something very deep which defines a person existentially. And one, I would say the leading scholar of American Judaism today is our teacher, Jonathan Sarna, has written an important article saying that this moment, after October 7th, is the moment in American Jewish history for Jews to double down on Jewish education. Not just to protest anti-Semitism, absolutely vigorously protest against anti-Semitism, but to say we need to know what it means to be Jewish. We need to be rooted. We need to be literate. And that the one way of resisting the anti-Semitism is to make sure we are literate in our tradition and we're raising our kids to be positive about Jewish education. We started the evening wonderfully this evening with the bat mitzvah, making the blessings perfectly. That's how you fight anti-Semitism in America, because then you have strong Jewish people who are going to stand up for their rights.
How many of you knew that there was a Jewish student in the first class of West Point? Good. Everybody learned something tonight. Well, thank you so much, Rabbi Sussman. That was both informative and inspiring, so we can all continue to come together as a community and support one another during these challenging times, but yet there's much to learn from the past that can carry us forward to the future.
Wonderful speaking with you.
Always.
Thank you.
Our service continues now on page 586, with Aleinu, words that were first incorporated into the Rosh Hashanah service about our faith in God, and that will hopefully inspire us for many generations to come. Please rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשינו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. Page 579. L'chol ish yeshem, shenatan lo Elohim v'natnu lo aviv v'imo. Each person has a name. We each have a name given by God and given by our father and mother. We each have a name given by our stature and smile and given by our attire. We each have a name given by the hills and given by the walls. We each have a name given by the stars and given by our friends. We each have a name given by our sins and given by our yearnings. We each have a name given by our enemies and given by love. We each have a name given by celebrations and given by our work. We each have a name given by the seasons and given by our blindness. We each have a name given by the sea and given by our death. And so it is on this Shabbat that we recall our loved ones who have been taken from us most recently and for whom we are in the period of Shloshim, as we remember with love Gilda Ellis, Gloria Barsky, Selma Comro, Jennifer Danny Raymond, Sharon Rode, Douglas Kowitz, Elliot Voron. And we remember our loved ones who died at this season in years past, as we remember with fondness Helfried Alberer, Evelyn Baumholtz, Samuel Biron, Edward Blank, Paul Brait, Adrian Braverman, Marlene Bronstein-Dubin, Selma Brothman, Clarence C. Kaplan, Eleanor Davis, Suzanne Diamond, Minnie Eisenberg, Stanley First. Remember Essie Fischler, Shirley Fogel, Daniel Frankel, Herman Gallner, Erica Summers Garrow, Eleanor Greenspan, Ronnie Gugick, Hyman Hafler, Ann Borth Herman, Stanford S. Pat Hun, Meta Joy Jacoby, Annette Katz, Joseph Kessler, Adeline Kimmelman, Reba C. Klein, Jenny Levin, Pearl Liss, Raymond Mazer, Harold Miller, Edward Nippon, Sylvia Nippon, Mildred Sonny Norman, Sidney David Orloff, Joseph Passline, Barney Paul, William Perez, David Pomerantz, Sarah Price, Sheldon Prussian, Sylvia Rosansky, Myrna Jacobson Rodden. And we remember Ida Becker Rosenman, Evelyn Rudenstein, Seymour Rudenstein, Hyman Saul, Norman Sassler, William Siegel, Evelyn Slutsky, Joshua Small, Albert Spritzler, Henry Platt Staunton, Jacob Stiffel, Richard Turker, Richard Weissmer, Bertie White, David White, Reuben Whitman, Louis Yar, and Stuart Young. Zichronam Livracha, may all their memories be an eternal blessing for our community as we turn to page 598 and rise to join together in the sacred words of the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divra chirute v'amlich malchute, b'chayachon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kari v'imru, Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam olamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, v'yitalev, v'yitalal, shemei d'kudsha b'richu, le'ela minko birchata v'shirata, tishbechata v'nechemata, dalmiran be'alma v'imru, Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, osei shalom b'mromav, Hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. May the Holy Blessed One who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all the world. And together we say, Amen. You may be seated, except for the lovely, the accomplished, the well-dressed Helene Ehrlich Cohen. I got to come up with something new.
Shabbat Shalom. And thank you to Rabbi Newberg, to Cantor Rudnick, to Rabbi Malo, to Agla Borisovsky for leading us tonight in this beautiful service. And thank you, Rabbi Sussman, for joining us and sharing your insight into anti-Semitism today. It's very thought-provoking. Join Rabbi Malo tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for Torah study, followed by our Shabbat morning service. Both Torah study and services will be in person and on Zoom. Rabbi Newberg will lead her Shabbat morning walk tomorrow at 9 a.m. Meet her on the Kinwood Trail at the Barmouth Trailhead. Purim is coming, and Sisterhood will be selling Shalach Manot again. There is no better way to spread joy and let your friends and loved ones know you're thinking of them. Look for the email on February 5th with instructions to place your order. Take a break for lunch on February 10th and spend an hour expanding your horizons in person or on Zoom with Rabbi Newberg during lunch with the rabbi. Coming from the Cold Curtis concert will be Sunday, February 23rd at 3 p.m. MLRT is a proud partner with Curtis Institute of Music, and they're very pleased to bring this hour-long concert to you. I do believe you need to call and make a reservation because seating is limited. Save the date for Saturday, March the 1st for our Be Inspired Bash, honoring Kerry and Dave Heppen and Jenny and Sam Nemroff. Play a winning hand at our casino night with dinner and dancing. Tickets are now on sale. The Sisterhood Bargain Boutique returns at the end of March. Collection will begin on the 23rd of March. So start organizing your jewelry, accessories, and any other goodies out of your closet. And Rabbi Newberg will be leading our congregation and other community members for the adult paperclips trip to the Children's Holocaust Memorial in Whitewell, Tennessee on May the 5th. Please reach out if you are interested in registering or for getting some additional information. I want to say Mazel Tov to the Smith family as Emily becomes bat mitzvah tomorrow morning. Yay, Emily. I think she's gone. You will find complete information about our upcoming programs in the bulletin, our e-news, and on the website. Wishing everyone a peaceful and happy week, and one more week till Super Bowl. Go Eagles.
Our closing song is the very last line of Kaddish. It is yet one more prayer for peace. May it come soon to every corner of the world. Osei Shalom.
Osei Shalom bimromav, Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru amen. Yalalalalai, oh, yalalai, lay, 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 yalalalai, 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 oh, yalalai, lay, 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 yalalalai, 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 oh, say shalom bimromav, oh, yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru amen.
Shabbat shalom. Stay warm and dry and safe. Be well. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.